Uncover 13 spine-chilling tales, terrifying secrets revealed in haunted rainstorms. Exposed. The wind howled as Sarah huddled with Emily and Jake in their cozy living room, the comforting glow of the lamp pushing back the gathering shadows. Outside, the rain lashed against the windows like 1,000 tiny fists, drumming a frenetic beat that echoed the racing pulse of her heart. Just another stormy night in Maplewood, or so she thought. But as the patter morphed into sharp thuds at the door, an electric chill crawled up her spine. Something was wrong. "Mommy, look," Jake murmured, his wide eyes focused on the dark shapes swirling outside. "They're watching us." Just as Sarah shot a nervous glance towards the window, the lights flickered harshly, momentarily illuminating the silhouettes lurking in the periphery. Were those shadows, or something more sinister? A feeling of suffocating dread stole the breath from her lungs. She pulled her children tighter against her, determined to protect them from whatever existed outside their bubble of innocence. The storm's intensity surged, and her phone vibrated violently on the table. It was Mrs. Hargrove, her elderly neighbor, with a voice coated in panic. "Stay inside, Sarah." The tremor in her tone was unmistakable. "Stay away from the windows. There are things out there. You have to believe me." But before Sarah could respond, the call cut out, leaving behind a heavy silence choked with fear. Rumors swirled through Maplewood about Mrs. Hargrove's late husband, whispers of his connection to disappearances that had haunted the town years ago. Were those legends rooted in truth or mere nightmares? Every instinct told her she was drowning in a rising tide of terror, and her children seemed to sense it too. "Mommy, the man in the window," Emily whimpered, her voice trembling. "He wants to come in." A shiver cascaded down Sarah's back. Swallowing hard, she glanced towards the rain-smeared glass, spotting a figure darting through the trees. Her vision blurred, heart pounding in trepidation. This wasn't just a storm. This was something far more terrifying. Suddenly, a loud bang erupted from the door, and panic pierced the air like a knife. Sarah's breath hitched, and with every ounce of courage, she grabbed her children, ready to flee. "We have to go, now!" she shouted, her voice breaking through the storm's howl. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue." Stepping into the flooded abyss of Maplewood streets, new fears clawed at her throat. The familiar neighborhood became an alien world, a labyrinth of shadows and echoing whispers, each step drowning in the skin-crawling sensation of unseen eyes. What had she truly brought her children into? They struggled against the torrential downpour, each drenching step leading them towards the heart of darkness, as ghostly figures flickered at the edge of her vision, beckoning them closer. Sarah's instincts screamed to turn back, but she pressed ahead, desperate for answers, clenching Emily and Jake's hands like lifelines. The storm masked the world above, concealing a town steeped in truths darker than she could fathom. And just as they approached the shattered remains of a house, a fleeting movement drew her gaze. Was someone watching from within? Heart racing, Sarah tightened her grip. Were they running from the storm, or something far worse lurking in the shadows? The door creaked ominously, a haunting echo that sent a chill down Sarah's spine. She dialed up her willpower and stepped closer, drawn in by a force more powerful than fear, a need to unveil the truth. The remnants of the house loomed like a broken sentinel, its dilapidated walls sagging beneath the weight of secrets. "Mommy, I don't like this place," Emily whimpered, her small voice barely piercing through the thunder's roar. "I know, sweetheart, but we have to find shelter," Sarah whispered back, her heart racing as she peered through the shattered window. Darkness yawned back at her, swallowing the last remnants of light. Suddenly, a flash of lightning illuminated the interior, revealing a glimpse of what lay ahead. Splintered furniture, splatters of mud, and something on the floor, a dark shape that looked like a discarded shoe. The cold grip of dread wrapped around her heart. "We need to keep moving," she urged, turning her back to the haunting scene. But just as she did, the wind shifted and carried a low growl, unsettling and primal. She glanced over her shoulder, convinced she had only imagined it, until another guttural snarl resonated through the thick, rain-soaked air. "Did you hear that?" Jake gasped, his innocent eyes wide with terror. Sarah's breath quickened, panic clawing viciously at her throat. "We have to go, now!" She tugged the children closer, sprinting past the decrepit house into the swirling storm. The world around them morphed into a blur of rain and shadows. Shapes lingered at the corners of her vision, dark figures creeping closer, following them with silent intent. The taste of iron filled her mouth as fear began tasting like blood. Were they real, or figments of an overactive imagination fueled by terror? Just as they turned down a narrow alley, a piercing scream shattered the night, echoing off the damp brick walls. Sarah's heart seized, an icy hand wrapping around her throat as she desperately scanned the shadows. Who had that been? And what fate awaited them if they couldn't find an escape? "Mommy," Emily cried, tugging on her arm, "I want to go home." Home. The words sent a shockwave through Sarah. They could not return to the safety of their home. If full of unsettling secrets, it was a sanctuary compared to this nightmare. "Almost there," she promised. Bursting from the alley, they entered a vacant lot where the skeletal remains of an abandoned playground loomed like a ghostly fortress. What should have been a haven for children now felt like a mausoleum, swallowed by shadows, draped in the decay of another time. "Is it safe?" Jake breathed, looking around nervously. Without answering, Sarah scanned the area. The swings creaked eerily in the wind. The slide, rusted and decrepit, seemed to mock their plight. In the corner of the lot, something moved, something small but frantic. Sarah squinted through the rain. "What's happening?" she murmured, stepping towards the movement. But as she got closer, the shape morphed into a feral-eyed creature, crouched low, its animalistic growl rumbling like thunder. She froze, her heart pounding in her ears. The creature appeared agonized, yet hungry, a reflection of their own trapped souls. "Mommy, let's go," Jake pleaded, his voice quaking. "Wait," she hissed, torn. She should run. Logic screamed at her to flee, but instinct whispered. This creature, too, was ensnared in the storm's chaos. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath them, and the shadows surged forward. The figures she had noticed before were now closing in. No longer mere whispers, they had taken form. Faces twisted in agony, reaching out with gnarled fingers, hungry for something she could not name. Panic surged as Sarah spun around to run back, but the shadowy figures blocked her path. "Mommy!" Jake screamed, clinging to her leg. There was nowhere to go. Each turn they took only led them deeper into the obscurity, tangled in a web of lost souls. "Stay close," she shouted over the chaos, the storm tearing at her sanity. The creature howled, joined by the wails of the figures closing in. They had awakened the very heart of Maplewood's horror. Somewhere deep inside, a truth clawed to the surface, unveiling layers of tragedy that shaped her life and this town. What had she missed? And did she dare stay long enough to find out? As she stumbled back, a dazzling flash illuminated the playground, momentarily banishing the shadows. In that fleeting moment, Sarah caught sight of a doll staring up at her from the mud, its eyes wide and pleading, a fading glimpse of innocence in a world gone nightmarish. "We need to keep moving," she whispered, feeling the suffocating grip of dread tightening around her again. But as she turned to face the shadows once more, a chilling whisper floated through the storm, wrapping around her like a noose. "Join us." And just like that, the hunt began anew. What was lurking in the shadows of Maplewood? The answer waiting to unravel might just drag them deeper into the darkness. The shadows tightened, and the air crackled with a raw energy, a warning shrouded in desperation. Sarah's heart thundered in her chest, drowning out the sounds of the storm. "This way," she whispered, blindly grasping for a sliver of hope, pulling Jake and Emily closer as they stumbled toward the remnants of rusted equipment. The creature's growl echoed in the darkness, reverberating against the metal structures. It seemed more agitated now, its feral eyes glinting as it tracked their movements, trapped in an emotion they all shared: fear. The figures in the shadows advanced, their forms shifting, lurking, mouths stretched into grotesque smiles. Sarah's instincts screamed at her to push forward, but her legs felt like lead. She scanned the playground, searching for an escape. A slide loomed ahead, dented and covered in grime, but it was tall enough to climb. "We need to get up there," she shouted. "Mommy, I can't." Emily trembled, her small hands gripping Sarah's sleeve. As if summoned by her words, a figure lunged forward, arms outstretched, the sickly sweet scent of decay wafting through the humid air. Jake screamed, the sound piercing the veil of rain, and Sarah propelled them towards the slide. "Up, now," she urged, hoisting Emily onto the slick surface, her mind racing. What if they couldn't make it? What if they fell? She scrambled after her, feeling rough metal scrape her palms, adrenaline fueling her ascent despite the uneasiness gripping her gut. They reached the top, breathless. The view from here was enough to freeze Sarah's blood. Below, the once familiar playground had become a gathering of nightmares. The figure swayed and twisted, a chilling chorus of whispers merging with the storm's howl. The creature paced beneath them now, hunger glimmering in its eyes as it caught their scent, darting back and forth like an eager beast. "Mommy, what are we going to do?" Jake pressed against her side, eyes wide with terror. "I don't know," Sarah admitted. A wave of dread washed over her. She closed her eyes, berating herself for bringing them here. She had thought she could confront her fears, not lead them into a trap. Suddenly, the ground trembled again, and the echoes of laughter, childish, innocent, filtered through the chaos, sending chills spiraling down her spine. It seeped through the thick rain, juxtaposed against the horrors looming around them. That laughter, it was wrong. "Do you hear that?" she croaked, her throat dry, her heart pounding. Emily nodded, eyes darting around, silent tears spilling down her cheeks. "It's just wind," Jake cried, desperation painting his voice. But the laughter persisted, hollow and mocking, each chuckle reverberating with a sense of impending doom. "What's happening?" Emily stammered, clutching her mother's arm. The shadows twisted closer, and in the flashes of lightning, their features momentarily became clear. Torn, anguished faces stared back at her, each one a reminder of some lost child. In the stillness, Sarah felt a cold realization. They weren't just lost, they were waiting, expecting. "Join us." The whisper rang out again, and this time Sarah could almost see the ghostly figures forming, their hands reaching, beckoning her to join them in their eternal twilight. "Get ready," she hissed, the words tumbling. From her mouth, "We jump." Jump? Emily squealed in fear. Trust me. With a final spurt of courage, Sarah leaped from the slide with Jake clinging to her side, aiming for the muddy ground below. They tumbled, twisting in midair, landing with a heavy thud. Mud caked their skin, but there was no time to recover. The hungry figures were looming. They had to run. Sarah grabbed the kids' hands, a surge of adrenaline propelling them forward, their feet pounding against the soaked earth. The playground, once symbolic of childhood joy, had morphed into a chaotic battleground, their escape route now swallowed in the greedy shadows. As they dashed toward the edge of the lot, the laughter transformed into wailing, a cacophony that chased them down the path. Just as they neared the boundary, an unseen force collided with the ground beneath them, sending them sprawling. "What the?" Sarah gasped, as a hand, skeletal and claw-like, burst through the mud, grabbing at her ankle, threatening to pull her down. "Mommy!" Jake screamed, and for a terrifying moment, time froze. Fingers of agony closed around her, a piercing pain shot through her heart, tinged with realization. This was not simply escape, it was a deeper connection to a horror that had clawed at her family for years, something she had ignored. "No!" With a grunt of desperation, she kicked free, adrenaline surging. They staggered forward once more, and for a breathless instant it seemed they might just make it. But they could hear the whispers rising, echoing in the storm, drawing them closer to the abyss. As they broke free from the gloom, Sarah glanced back at the writhing figures, and for a split second she thought she saw the face of someone she recognized. The face of a child lost long ago, smiling, beckoning for her to join. Then they were through, tumbling into the darkness beyond the playground, hearts pounding wildly. But was it truly an escape, or just another layer of nightmare waiting to unfold? What lay ahead in the shadows of Maplewood? They were alive for now, but would they remain so as dawn broke? They stumbled into the weighty darkness, the storm behind them a cacophony of anger and rage. Sarah could feel Emily's tiny fingers trembling against her palm. A dreadful thought crossed her mind. Was this darkness a refuge, or merely an extension of the hell they had just escaped? "Keep moving," Sarah urged, though her own voice wavered. The rain lashed against their faces, chilling them, but they had to push through. This night was far from over. The ground beneath them squelched, each step a reminder of how precarious their situation was. The wailing in the distance faded, but felt replaced by the oppressive weight of silence, heavy and stifling. It was all-consuming. It wrapped around them like a suffocating blanket. "Where are we?" Jake asked, breathless, his eyes darting left and right, dissecting the inky blackness. I think we're still in the park, Sarah. Just outside the playground." "Why does it feel different?" Emily asked, her voice small, soaked in fear. Suddenly, from the shadows, a figure lurched forward. A droplet of rain landed on the back of Sarah's neck. Chills raced down her spine as the figure stepped into the brief light cast by a flickering street lamp. An old man. His clothes were tattered, pale skin stretched tight over bony limbs. He looked up, eyes hollow and sunken. "Help me," he rasped, mouth twisting into an unsettling grin that revealed more teeth than humanly possible. Sarah's stomach turned. "We can't," she hissed, ready to turn. But the man stepped closer, his skeletal fingers reaching toward them, eyes glimmering with an otherworldly fervor. "Look closer. Just help them," he whispered, the words oozing from his mouth like venom. Jake's stomach turned. "We can't," she hissed, ready to turn. But the man stepped closer, his skeletal fingers reaching toward them, eyes glimmering with an otherworldly fervor. "Look closer. Just help them," he whispered, the words oozing from his mouth like venom. Jake clutched her tighter, his voice barely a whisper. "Mommy, let's go!" "Now!" Sarah yelled, pulling the children behind her, forcing her legs to move, pushing the boundaries of her own terror. As they skidded past him, she couldn't help but feel the flicker of life dimming in him, a living phantom hidden in plain sight. They sprinted through the trees that bordered the playground, shadows dancing eerily in the flickering light. But it was worse now. The deeper they went, the more distorted the air felt around them. Time was slick, stretching and compressing like melted wax. "Mommy, we need to stop!" Emily gasped, voice trembling. "No," Sarah urged, her heart racing in rhythm with their pounding feet. "We need to find help. We just need to find—" But her words faded as she turned a corner and stumbled onto an old, crumbling gazebo. Its once cheerful paint had faded to a sickly gray, splattered with dirt, and shadows clung to its edges. The sight eased her breath briefly, the structure offering a form of shelter against their unknown pursuers. "Stay close," she commanded, ushering the children inside. They huddled in a corner, trying to catch their breaths, the heavy air pressing against their chests painfully. Just then, a raspy chuckle filled the space. Each hair stood on end as Sarah spun around. "Did you think you could escape?" A child's voice echoed, clear yet haunted. The sound swirled in the air, rebounding off the walls, the tone sickeningly joyful. "Who's there?" Sarah shouted, voice trembling as fear gripped her. "Join us," echoed in a chorus. Flickers of light danced outside the gazebo, and Sarah caught glimpses of small figures darting between the trees. Children, or something that resembled children, their faces marked with empty smiles, eyes wide yet void of warmth. One stepped closer, a girl with matted hair and pale skin, gliding through shadows like smoke. "Come play," she sang gleefully. "What do you want?" Sarah breathed, trying to keep her voice steady. "Just to be friends," came the delighted reply. But inside the gazebo, the chill of dread wrapped around them like an embrace. Jake's hand tightened around hers. "Mommy, I'm scared." Sarah pressed, her lips together, fighting the encroaching fear. "We'll be okay. We'll figure this out." But her mind raced. This was not the way out. They needed to escape. They needed— A sudden crash echoed from the other side of the gazebo, as if something massive collided with the structure. The children shrieked, and Sarah's heart felt like it would implode. "Run!" she shouted, adrenaline surging anew. "Out the back!" As they scrambled to their feet, their laughter turned to wails, and Sarah felt that chill of recognition. Something was pulling at her, just beyond her reach, something that didn't want them to leave. Just then, the shadows around the gazebo seemed to pulse, thickening as if trying to ensnare them. With a final surge of terror-laced courage, Sarah led her children toward the back exit, heart racing as the ground lurched beneath them once more. Would they make it out, or was this just another nightmare? Could salvation truly wait beyond the darkness, or was the true horror still lurking just ahead? They bolted through the back of the gazebo, tearing through the darkness that felt alive, gnawing at their heels like a ravenous creature. The sharp sense of dread clung to Sarah, pulling at her like a relentless tide. There was no more time to think. Each second mattered. "Keep going!" she shouted, guiding Emily and Jake forward. Desperate to escape the clutches of whatever lurked behind, Sarah stumbled through the dense underbrush. Branches clawed at their skin, the rough terrain threatening to trip them up at every step. "Where's the playground?" Emily cried, her breath coming in quick gasps. "I'm not sure," Sarah shouted back. Glancing back, she noticed the shadows swirling, pooling behind her like ink spilled in water, urging her to turn and see what lay there. A warning sensation prickled her skin. Something was following. "Mommy!" Jake whimpered, his little hands picking up the pace, though fear still gnawed at him. Above, the storm rumbled, lightning brightening the abyss for a brief moment. The flash illuminated a scene so disturbing that it seared into Sarah's memory. Two childlike figures, their faces turned towards her, eyes reflecting nothing but pitch darkness. Then they vanished, swallowed by the night. Sarah stumbled into an open area, shocked to find what appeared to be old swings swaying gently in the wind, creaking as though welcoming them home. But the dim light flickered in a different rhythm now, almost mocking, as if the playground itself was alive with sinister intentions. "Make it stop!" Emily cried, shuddering. "Everything's wrong. I don't like it." "We'll find a way out. Just stay close to me," Sarah urged, fear roiling in her stomach like a beast ready to strike. She scanned the ground, but everything looked identical, transforming into a dark labyrinth of familiar shapes twisted into something grotesque. Suddenly, a loud shriek shattered the air, chilling Sarah to the core. It sounded like a child's voice, a voice filled with pain and desperation. "Help us!" it echoed, fading.
Just as it had come. "Did you hear that?" Jake whispered, terror-ridden. "Yes, but we can't stop," Sarah replied, pushing ahead. Panic surged as the shriek repeated, its cries amplifying the terror in her heart. For every step she took, it felt as though something sinister had slipped closer, lurking just beyond the veil of shadows. They dashed toward the nearest exit of the playground, guided only by the flickering light, desperate to extinguish any illusion of safety. Each swing creaked eerily in response, an unsettling symphony of despair wrapping around them. With a determined push, they leapt from the playground, and fresh dread washed over Sarah. Where were they? The path diverged into three, and she froze, suddenly faced with a choice. Each direction radiated a sense of foreboding, darkened by the trees that leaned in, whispering secrets not meant for ears. "There," a voice called, soft yet insistent. The shadows seemed to point down a narrow path, hardly visible and overgrown with tangled weeds. Sarah's heart raced. Should they follow? "I don't like it, Mommy," Jake cried, trembling. "I don't either, but we can't go back," Sarah said, weighing the options. The shriek echoed again, closer this time, air thick with darkness. "We have to make a choice." With every frightened glance back, she could feel the presence closing in. The storm roared above, setting the air ablaze with erratic flashes of light, casting disturbing shapes that danced menacingly at the edges of her vision. "Please," Emily begged, her small voice breaking, "not that way." Just then, a shadowy figure stepped into the flickering light, a familiar shape, yet twisted into something unrecognizable. It was a child, but one that bore the weight of unimaginable sorrow, its face contorted in anguish. "Help me, please help us," it pleaded, but Sarah could only stand, frozen in place as horror gripped her heart. Could they truly trust this phantom who mirrored the innocence of those they sought to protect? What dark fate awaited if they followed any of the paths in front of them? The storm surged violently, darkness thickening with intention. The answers danced just out of reach, weaving a web of entrapment. "What will you do?" echoed the haunting plea, wrapping around Sarah like a shroud, pushing her toward a decision fraught with unknown consequences. As panic surged like a tidal wave, she realized there wasn't much time left. Choose wisely, or the nightmare may never end. Sarah's heart raced as she locked eyes with the shadowy figure. It beckoned her with a hand that seemed both familiar and unsettling, its voice a ghostly whisper that twisted the air around them. "Help us, please help us." It was a child's plea, but the weight of despair in it turned her stomach. "Mommy," Jake clutched her leg, his small fingers digging into her jeans. "I want to go home." Emily shivered beside them, her skin pale. "We can't trust it. It's not real." The storm raged above, a cacophony of thunder shaking the ground beneath their feet. Sarah could feel the presence behind them, like a predator waiting for the moment to pounce. "We have to make a choice, now," she shouted, but uncertainty clawed at her. "Go left," Emily cried, pointing frantically toward the narrow path that twisted away into the darkness. "No, right," Jake squeaked, glancing back at the silhouette of the child. I want to help. Each choice felt like a step closer to danger. Stop, Sarah commanded, her mind racing. One way leads to safety, the other to more despair. The cries echoed in her mind, drowning out her thoughts. We can't be fooled. The ominous figure wavered, its image flickering like a dying flame, drawing closer with each moment. Sarah felt the weight of desperation. She didn't want to abandon that element of compassion for the lost child. But in the back of her mind, a warning nagged at her. What if helping this entity meant losing her own children? "Mommy," Jake whimpered again, his eyes wide with fear. "Trust me," she yelled as the shadows stirred around them. They were shoving her toward the left path, where the sounds of the storm seemed to grow softer, almost inviting. In a sudden burst of defiance, she took a step toward the right path, ignoring the dark voice echoing through her thoughts. "We're going this way. Stay close." The figure groaned, its voice distorted as it faded back into the shadows. "Help us! You'll regret this!" Sarah gripped her children tight, fear bubbling in her chest like a viper ready to strike. Together, they plunged down the treacherous path, their steps quickening as the muted shrieks faded behind them. For a moment, they felt truly alone, save for the pulsing thrum of the storm. But that silence was short-lived. A growl erupted from the underbrush. Something large stirred in the darkness. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. "Faster," she urged. The path snaked steeply downward, and as they ran, she realized it was becoming more treacherous. Roots and rocks jutted unpredictably. Emily slipped, gasping as she stumbled forward, but Sarah grabbed her just in time. "I got you." Then the ground quivered beneath them. The shadows twisted again, and before she could even look behind, a howling wind whipped against them. Something was rising, a shape emerging from the depths of the storm, like a nightmare taking form. Just as they reached the bottom, and the forest gave way to a clearing bathed in dying light, Sarah paused. Scattered around them were the remnants of forgotten playground toys, rusted, decaying. The familiar forms twisted into grotesque shapes, slumped and broken, like the forgotten spirits of children. "Mommy, do you see that?" Jake whispered, his voice trembling. The wind shifted again, carrying with it the chilling laughter of children, a mockery that sent shivers down her spine. As Sarah scanned their surroundings, desperate to find an escape, she noticed a small door embedded in the tree trunk. It glimmered with an otherworldly light that felt almost inviting. With the howling creature still lingering in the shadows behind them, Sarah took a deep breath. "We have to go in there." But before she could lead her children forward, the shadows twisted again, and the anguished whispers rose louder, saturating the air around them. It felt like a trap, a final bait leading them to something darker. "Wait!" Emily screamed as the wind howled around them. "What if it's a trick?" Sarah faced her children, dread clawing at her insides. We might have no choice. Would they step cautiously into the unknown, or would the shadows claim them as theirs? The door beckoned, a glimmer of potential salvation, or an entryway to a horror beyond comprehension. "Do you trust me?" she asked, the tremor in her voice betraying her fear. But as the storm raged around them, the question hung heavy. Would trust lead them to safety, or into the waiting arms of darkness? Sarah felt her heart hammering against her ribcage, a frantic drumbeat echoing the chaos around them. The door shimmered, its edges flickering like a mirage in the storm's fury. She glanced nervously at Jake and Emily, who were both staring wide-eyed, caught between terror and helplessness. "Mommy," Jake whimpered, his small voice cracking. "What if we go in and it's worse?" The shadows around them writhed, as if eager to answer his question. A low growl rumbled from the depths of the woods, echoing ominously, pushing Sarah closer to the door. "I don't know, Jake," she admitted, her voice trembling, "but I promise I won't let anything hurt you. We need to stick together." Before she could finish her sentence, an icy gust swept through the clearing, rattling the branches above and lifting the fallen leaves like ghostly dancers. The laughter faintly filtered through, twisted and jarring against the silence. It was unsettling, yet curiously enticing, promising safety, or perhaps a dark secret that yearned to be uncovered. "What if it's a trap?" Emily's voice was sharp, brimming with the survival instincts of a child who had already seen too much. "It has to be better than whatever is behind us," Sarah snapped, uncertainty gnawing at her. Thick silence enveloped them, except for the distant rumble of thunder, as if the very universe was holding its breath. Then the howling wind shifted again, and the shadows coalesced into a dark shape, creeping toward them, stretching closer, making her skin prickle with dread. Every instinct urged her to run, but the door, the ethereal door, held some bizarre promise. Without quite realizing why, she took a step forward, heart racing. "We're going in!" Maybe it was desperation, or a mother's instinct to find any means to keep her children safe. "No!" Emily cried out, pulling on Sarah's arm with surprising strength. Jake, too, recoiled. "Please don't, Mommy!" But Sarah felt tethered to the shimmering entryway. "We don't have time to argue!" In a sudden moment of panic, she shoved open the door, revealing a swirling mass of shimmering light and darkness. It smelled of damp earth and distant echoes, reminiscent of laughter turned sinister. "Come on!" she hollered at her children, her voice barely rising above the wind. It felt like they were on the edge of something monumental. She stepped into the unknown, dragging her children along as the light engulfed them. The world twisted around them, colors morphing and fading into the shadows. A brief moment of vertigo swept over Sarah, and she felt weightless, plummeting through a dreamy haze. But then it shattered, and they landed inside a cramped, darkened room. Brightness flickered overhead, revealing walls covered in peeling paint, images of despairing faces that seemed alive with anguish. Whispers surrounded them, a collective moan that sent chills racing down her spine. "Where are we?" Jake's voice quivered, clutching on to Emily, who had her eyes darting frantically. "Don't look around. We have to find a way out," Sarah commanded, but her heart sank as she noticed the door behind them was gone, vanished back into the twisted shadows. The shadows thickened in the corners, and strange shapes flickered. In the room's center stood a mirror, cracked and tarnished, reflecting a distorted version of herself, a wild-eyed ghost of the woman she used to be. "Help us," the whispers called again, echoing hauntingly through her mind. "Free us." "From what?" Emily shouted, her voice cracking. The collective cries began to take form, rising in desperation, swirling with energy that threatened to consume them. Sarah's hands trembled as she stepped closer to the mirror, compelled to understand. Was this a reflection of her fate, or the fate of the lost children that beckoned her for help? The glass rippled, and a glimmer of awareness washed over her. But just then, shadowy figures danced within the edges, forming grotesque faces within whispered calls, chilling her resolve. "Mommy, what do we do?" Jake pleaded, eyes wide. The whispers crescendoed, the very air around them thickening with despair and urgency. A question flared to life in Sarah's heart. What was the price of their escape? They needed to act, but with each passing second, dread settled deeper in her gut, like a stone cast into dark waters. As Sarah grappled with her choice, one word echoed amidst the chaos: a choice with consequences. Would they pay the price to uncover the truth hidden within the shadows? In that moment of indecision, the reflection gave a final haunting smile, twisting its lips. And then the last phantom laughter faded into the darkness, leaving Sarah and her children confronting the chilling unknown. What secrets lay hidden in that glass? And if they gazed deeper, would they find a way out, or be trapped forever in despair's embrace? The room pulsed with an oppressive energy, the whispers rising and falling like a tide of despair. Sarah's heart raced as she stood paralyzed, the mirror's reflection pulling her in. She could see her own face twisted with fear, but deeper than that, murky sadness filled with ghosts of the past. The swirling darkness in the corners seemed to mock her, taunting her with secrets she knew she shouldn't bear. "Stay back!" Sarah yelled, instinctively stepping in front of her children when she sensed the shadows lurch closer. But the more she resisted, the more the shapes seemed to coil tighter, wrapping around them like a vice. "Mommy, make it stop!" Jake whimpered, tears streaming down his cheeks. His small frame trembled, and Emily grasped her other hand like a lifeline. "Please," Sarah breathed, fighting against the enveloping dread that clawed at her insides. She felt the mirror drawing her gaze again, the surface warping to reveal fleeting images, children lost in a spiral of despair, their mouths moving in silent screams. A sudden heat flared in the room, engulfing them in an eerie glow. In the center of the mirror, a face emerged, a boy with sunken eyes and matted hair. He was one of the lost children, trapped forever in a state of longing. "Help me," his whisper twined through the air, leaving a chill in its wake that snaked up Sarah's spine. "What do you want from us?" Sarah demanded, adrenaline fueling her voice. The figures responded with a chorus of anguished moans, a shroud of hopelessness cascading over her. "Free us," they echoed again, the room vibrating with raw desperation. "Mommy, I'm scared." Jake's voice broke through her resolve, pulling her attention back to her children. With urgency flaring in her chest, she turned to them, trying to shield them from the nightmare unfolding. "Whatever happens, we stick together, okay?" Sarah said, though her own voice trembled. She peered again into the mirror, the faces of the trapped children dancing closer. "We can get out of this. We have to." Emily pointed, pressing her small fingers to the glass. "It wants us to help them." Sarah's breath caught. What if helping them is the only way out? A fight raged within her. Was it a risk worth taking? It was their only option, and desperation clawed for a choice. Looking from Emily to Jake, she saw how scared they were, how fearful of what lay ahead. The shadows were darkening, pooling like liquid malice across the floor. "We have to make the choice," she shouted over the rising cacophony of wails. "We can't let fear control us." "In or out?" murmured a voice that seemed to emanate from the mirror itself. Instinctively, Sarah took a step toward the mirror, her hand reaching out. The moment her fingers grazed the glass, it pulsed again, a shockwave that sent a flood of memories rushing through her. Her childhood, carefree screams, laughter echoed in darkened hallways, and finally, nights spent huddled on the floor after nightmares led her there. The faces in the mirror twisted in agony, warping into flashes of her own past. She steadied herself, stepping closer. "I'll help you. Show me how." The room erupted as the whispers grew deafening. Shadows surged forward, and the mirror exploded with blinding light, pulling them in. A paradox of warmth and frigid cold enveloped them, tumbling through time and space as it consumed their will. As the last coherent thought faded, it left behind a feeling of cold isolation, sharpening into a sharp realization. They weren't just wandering aimlessly, they were racing against something far worse than fear. And then, everything went dark. What awaited them on the other side? Would they find the children, or simply become lost souls themselves? The truth lingered just beyond the void, a pulse beneath the shadows, waiting to be discovered. Sarah's world exploded into chaos, but it wasn't total darkness. Instead, it was an unsettling twilight, split between familiar shadows and unfamiliar shapes.
She blinked, trying to focus, feeling her children clinging to her arms like anchors in a storm. They were no longer in her bedroom, but rather in a passageway, dimly lit. The air felt heavier, as if weighted by whispers lost in time. "Where are we?" Jake's voice trembled, each syllable thick with fear. I don't know," Sarah stammered, panic clawing at her throat. They stood before a series of closed doors, each one etched with strange symbols, their designs shifting and morphing in the low light. "Mommy, I don't like this place," Emily whispered, her grip tightening around Sarah's hand. Sarah turned to reassure her, but as she did, a door creaked open at the far end of the hallway, revealing a pitch-black void beyond. From within, a low murmur, barely audible, filled the air, a cacophony of overlapping voices echoing a single haunting plea. "Help us. Come play." A burst of instinct pushed Sarah forward. "We have to find out where that's coming from." Before she could brace herself, she felt the kids pull back, their small forms nearly snatching her off balance. "No, Mommy, don't go!" Jake cried, fighting against the force that seemed to beckon from the dark. "Stay close," she pleaded, but her voice was drowned out by another wave of moans that resonated through the passageway. Each whisper filled her mind with visions of children, lost, broken, searching for something she couldn't yet understand. The walls seemed to pulse with life. Sarah could almost feel them breathing, capturing glimpses of the past through tiny cracks, as if memories were pressed into the plaster. She reached out to touch one, searching for something real amidst the disorienting haze. As her fingers grazed the doorframe, searing pain shot through her hand. She jerked it back, watching as dark liquid seeped from the crack, pooling on the floor like a thick, viscous ink. Jake gasped, eyes wide, as the shadows morphed closer, inky tendrils creeping toward them. Just then, the murmurs erupted into a chorus of screams, their agony slicing through the air. "Help us! In the mirror!" The sound was unbearable. Every nerve in her body screamed to flee, yet there was no escape from the shadows that engulfed them. "Mommy, I'm scared," Emily's voice cracked. A raw thread of terror. "No, keep holding on," Sarah shouted back, gathering her resolve. It felt like the darkness was binding them, and if she showed any sign of weakness, they would be consumed. But the shadows pulsed with a hunger that felt insatiable, climbing up her legs, ready to drag her down. Suddenly, the door she had seen moments ago swung wide open, revealing a dimly lit room filled with flickering candles. The flames danced erratically, casting grotesque shadows against the walls, where fragmented shapes twisted into nightmares of sorrow and despair. Figures loomed at the edges of the light, their features blurred, pleading. "Do you want to play?" A voice crooned, childlike yet laced with something sinister. Sarah's heart raced. She had to make a choice: enter the room and face whatever lay inside, or retreat into the growing darkness behind her. But the wicked whispers clawed at her sanity, promising salvation, yet their tone dripped with malice. "I'll do anything," a shadow between the flames crooned seductively. "I just want to be free. Join us." Sarah took a deep breath, weighing the fear of the unknown against the growing desperation in her children's eyes. "Together," she whispered, her heart pounding as she took a step toward the door. Just as she crossed the threshold, the floor beneath them trembled violently, sending tremors of dread through the room. The flickering lights dimmed, shadows swirling tighter around them, and the once childlike voice morphed into a chilling roar. "You should have never come here." As darkness wrapped its cold grip around them, the last thing Sarah saw was her children's frightened faces, a reflection of her own terror. And then, nothing. What lay in wait for them was darker than she had ever imagined. Would they escape the nightmare, or would it swallow them whole?
The waiting dread lingered in the space between breaths, holding secrets they were yet to uncover. The darkness pressed in on them, suffocating and thick. It felt almost alive, crawling under Sarah's skin, urging her to succumb to the despair that surrounded them. She could barely register where she was, her thoughts muddled in fear and confusion. "Mommy?" Jake's whisper tore through the gauzy silence, fragile and trembling. "Where are we?" "I don't know, sweetheart," Sarah replied, clenching her fists as if it could help ward off the shadows creeping ever closer. "But we need to stick together, no matter what." Emily gripped her mother's arm, her small body shaking. "I want to go home." The last remnants of her familiar world felt like a distant echo, a fading sound in the tempest that raged around them. But deep down, Sarah felt the pulse of something beyond despair, something flickering like an ember waiting to ignite. With determination, Sarah surveyed the room, her instincts kicking in. The flickering candles tossed erratic light upon distorted figures standing at the edges, their shapes reminiscent of children playing, but there was no laughter here, only sorrow. "We have to find a way out," she breathed, stepping forward to confront the shadows. "Come play," a voice sang out, sweet on the surface but twisting like a dagger in her heart. The figures seemed to swell, inviting yet repelling, beckoning her with empty promises. "No!" she shouted, forcing her voice to cut through the ominous melody. "We are not playing any more." Her defiance ignited a reaction. The shadows shrieked, writhing back momentarily, but it was a fragile victory. "We can't battle shadows," Emily gasped, her fear palpable. Sarah turned to her, fiercely protective. "We're not battling, we're escaping, together." The flickering light grew dimmer, the air thickening with despair. The looming figures materialized closer, each one trapped in the echoes of their own lost hopes. "Help us," they moaned, their faces contorted with anguish. "Please help us." Sarah's heart faltered. How could she help them? They appeared to be tethered to their sorrow, bound by the weight of their past. But in that moment she realized that their sorrow, tangled with her own, mirrored the truth she had been avoiding. These children were reflections of her fears, but more importantly, they represented the past she had left unchecked. "Let go!" she shouted, feeling heat surge through her. "You don't need to linger in the shadows. You're not alone." With every word, a warmth pulsed within the room. The shadows recoiled, shrieking as light began to pierce through. It surged, illuminating the fragile faces of the lost children, each one flickering like an old film reel. They seemed to hesitate, as though her voice evoked forgotten memories, the heaviness of despair lightening, if only just. "Join us," a wailing voice cried, the shadows forming a cyclone of sorrow. But the more they insisted, the more Sarah felt resolute. "You can be free!" The light intensified, and the figures flickered. "I can help you. You are allowed to move on." As if struck by lightning, the chorus of anguished pleas distorted, a cacophony of confusion rippling through the shadows, causing them to pulse and writhe. The warmth of her words enveloped Sarah, almost tangible, wrapping around Jake and Emily, pulling them away from the darkness. Then the shadows unraveled, splintering into a million pieces, transforming into hues of shimmering light, and for the first time she caught glimmers of joy in their mournful eyes, the possibility of release. "Mommy!" Jake's voice was filled with awe and wonder. "Look!" The figures danced gracefully in the light, free at last from the shackles of their sorrow. They reached towards Sarah, their previous torment giving way to grateful smiles, each child guided by a light only they could perceive. "Thank you," they whispered, before they dissipated into bright sparks, swallowed by the glow that now filled the room.
Sarah knelt down, pulling her children into her embrace, her heart swelling with warmth. The nightmare wouldn't claim them. They had broken the cycle of fear. "We did it," she whispered, holding them close. As the last echoes of sobs diminished into an exhilarating
silence, the room pulsed, then transformed, the walls knitting back together, shadows replaced with vibrant colors of dawn breaking through. The path to their home lay ahead, clearer than it had ever been. "Let's go home," she said, determination flooding her voice, pulling them up onto their feet. Together, their hands clasped tightly, they stepped toward the light, a bridge forged from shared strength and bravery. Outside, the storm had ceased, the rain replaced by the welcoming glow of sunrise peeking through the trees of Maplewood. The air felt fresh and renewed, swirling with the promise of a brighter day. As they emerged, Sarah turned to her children, their faces radiant against the dawning light. "It's over," she breathed, a lump forming in her throat. The weight of darkness had lifted, leaving a flicker of hope behind. "We're safe now." And with that, they walked forward. Maplewood, with all its secrets, could no longer haunt them. They had confronted the shadows and emerged unscathed, together. But before they vanished into the embrace of sunlight, a whisper lingered, weaving through the air behind them. A gentle reminder of the brave souls they had freed, etched in the history of time. The love they had shared within the depths of horror had unlocked the door to light. As the horizon brightened, she realized with profound clarity, their journey had not merely been an escape. It had been a renewal of life's promise, a chance to cherish one another. And as the dawn swept over Maplewood, it brought with it the clear understanding, love, even amid the darkest shadows, could always light the way. Now it's your turn. You need to subscribe now to keep up with the latest thrilling stories. Smash that like button right now to help us feed the algorithm and keep the tide of fantastic content flowing. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about this wild ending. And don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to feel this electrifying conclusion. Your support means the world. Only true fans understand its importance. Now it's your turn. You need to subscribe now to keep up with the latest thrilling stories. Smash that like button right now to help us feed the algorithm and keep the tide of fantastic content flowing. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about this wild ending. And don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to feel this electrifying conclusion. Your support means the world. Only true fans understand its importance.